This is Hunt Nebraska, the official podcast for insight into Nebraska's hunting and shooting sports community. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, our space for sharing stories, information, tips, and techniques. Now, Hunt Nebraska. Welcome into the Hunt Nebraska cabin. Oh boy, it's been a while since we've been able to get in here. Well, summer, or what we sometimes call the dreaded off season.
It's been rough on all of us.
We're kind of coming out of it, right? We kind of are anyhow. But we get pulled a lot of different directions. It's a time of year when we do a lot of prep work, a lot of coordination stuff, which might be interesting to some of you, but most listeners, not a lot of fun.
I remember late July.
The fun's coming.
You were walking down the hall, and I said, "Hershey, how you doing?" And you just had your head down. You kind of kicked the floor and said, "Nothing good."
Yeah, and that sounds like me.
That sounds. I mean, you were pretty down about it.
Usually, there's like a rock or an empty can, and it has to be tin can. It can't be one of those aluminum.
We got to August, and now we're here. We're to September. September is right on the. We're knocking on the door for September, and that makes us feel good.
We got Jeff Rawlinson for just a little while longer. I mean, who knows what's happening here.
Yeah.
And I dropped my prop there. But you're here until the 3rd of September?
The 7th of September.
7th of September? It's kind of a moving target, folks.
Yeah.
Well, that 7th is a pretty important date, you know.
Yeah. I'm here until the last hour of the 50th anniversary for Hunter Education Celebration. And then I move on to the next chapter in my life.
All right. See, and it probably has a little impact because by then football season will be upon us.
And that's where I'm heading. I've got a pro contract going on, and I'm going to be a football player.
And depending on what he says and how the game's going, might be who he's working for. But Jeff Rawlinson, we've got Kyle back in the studio. You've been a part of this a couple of times.
Yep, I've been around whenever you guys let me come back into the cabin.
There you go, our Hunter Ed coordinator, and we'll be talking a little bit about some of the big things going on there. Probably in next week a little bit more, but we might touch on it today. We got Rachel, our shooting range guru, in the house. Me, I'm Hershey. We're all with your Nebraska Game and Parks for the time being.
For now,
for the time being, yeah. But we're going to have some fun because it is here. The glorious 1st of September is not very far away, and by the time you're listening or watching us here, it'll be even closer. But isn't it kind of neat this time of the year? Yeah, we still have some heat. We're still going to have some hot days and all that, but you do feel a little bit of transition.
Oh, yeah. I've been enjoying some cooler mornings, rolling down the windows on the drive-in now because it's actually nice and cool out.
What day was it where... in the morning, it was during the week because I remember driving to work, just foggy is all get out. I mean, it was super duper foggy.
The foggy day. Yeah.
I mean, it would just, it kind of like
2 mornings ago.
You don't see that in July very often, but in August, you're just like, oh, something's happening.
Yeah.
Times are changing, seasons changing, more dew on the ground in some places, and that's why some of our upland bird counts take place in early August, because not only are the chicks big enough to move around, be a little more visible, but that dew in the morning kind of drives them out of the cover.
Honestly, with the start of squirrel season being August 1, we've had a pretty good August so far. So it hasn't been that bloody hell hot August that we've normally had.
So let's start there. How many times have you been squirrel hunting?
None.
Whoops.
None.
Different subject. But yeah, that kind of begins, and I think it goes kind of unheralded because oftentimes August 1st, you're thinking, oh my goodness. For those that have youngsters going back to school, you're seeing the back to school sales and the notebooks coming out and the highlighters and the boxes of crayons and all that, and your mind kind of goes elsewhere thinking, crap, summer's just about done, and if we're going to get away or do a little trip to one of our state parks, we're running out of time.
How many trips to state parks have you taken this summer?
Several. In fact, I was there just this last weekend.
Non-working.
One of our beautiful state recreation areas. No, I enjoy time both on and off the clock at our state recreation areas, wildlife management, state parks.
I have been to quite a few state parks this summer. It's been a good summer for that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. We are getting complaints. Anytime Jeff goes to like a state park, he calls a meeting. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like, we got to meet.
Yeah. If they show up, they show up.
Put an archery range right here, Rachel. I think we can
well, that's kind of the way you get a meeting, right? You walk in there, we're going to build a range right here. Yeah. Everybody wants to meet.
That's what's going on. That's why we've been going so many different places. I get it now.
Yeah. This is the aquatic center at Mahoney State Park. Yeah, let me an
Rachel,
aquatic archery
keep
range.
this in mind in your tenure moving forward. You want to get a meeting together, just show up and tell them this is where we're thinking to build a range. You'll get a good meeting there.
They'll
and
just
half
come
the
crawling
time,
out of the
over
woodwork.
half the time, it'll be very supportive of it. Yep, let's do it. Our team, they're ready to go. The Parks team's ready to go.
But we've had some archery seasons open up we've had some elk seasons open up. I believe we've had pronghorn. Mm-hmm. Our book calls them antelope, and that's the way state statutes and code reads, but we know that they're not true antelope, folks. They're pronghorn, second fastest land mammal on the planet. And seen some success, some cow elk already tagged, which is pretty cool. Folks already filling the freezer. But for the most of us, September 1st is really kind of the line in the sand.
It's a big deal. That's when they really start to fall.
Huge.
After September 1, the seasons just start to fall.
Yeah, everything just looks up and up. I mean, September 1st now, traditional opener for
archery deer season.
Dove.
Let's start with
season.
dove.
Okay, dove.
Let's start with dove. Because that's what first wing shooting season of the year.
Well, that's the beauty of September 1. There's something for everybody. But dove is a big deal. That's the one. That one gets me chomping the bit. For the first week of September, that really gets me chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
I
I
might
tend to be
disagree.
very
You
sick.
might disagree.
If I'm going to go shooting something with feathers on, I'm going to go out teal hunting.
Ooh,
a
little
Can't argue with that.
discrepancy. All right.
Can't argue with that.
But I want to go into both of those right off the bat. September 1st. And folks, if you haven't already looked at the calendar, that is a Sunday this year. It's on the Sunday of the holiday weekend that we know as Labor Day weekend. So kind of neat, but it's also, we're going to get a lot of folks, Rachel, saying, you guys messed this up. Don't you guys look at your calendar? Why didn't you open this on that Saturday of that weekend?
Very good reason.
Why not? Why'd you wait till Sunday? We're all missing a day because some of us have to go to do things on Sunday and this and that and the other thing. Huge reason.
Well, yeah, we're against Saturday hunting.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Okay.
No,
Let's see.
there's an obvious reason. Explain
We might have
There's
just
an
moved
obvious-
that September 7th date up just a little bit.
There's an obvious reason for that. Explain that. Explain that. Because that's a concern
Well,
for a lot of folks all the time.
Let's let the guy and gal that know rules and regulations
Go
better
for it.
than anybody else.
Go for it.
I'm just going to say the simple answer is we can't.
It's not possible.
We can't. And why is that, Kyle?
Because we're somewhat structured all through the federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife. They help dictate what we can and can't do and how we set our season dates. So we can only set them within their parameters, which
That's
includes a September 1st start date.
That's the earliest that anybody in the United States can set a dove season. That's the earliest if some states decide to do a September season or are allowed to do a teal season, those upper, mid-tier states, as John McKinney says. That's the earliest you can do it. And it has to do with the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, right? Because these are birds that not only cross state lines, so they fall to federal government as far as the framework, but also at times international lines, which also then goes to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the feds, as we lovingly call them. And it kind of comes down to, once you get into the spring, right up through August, nesting season. And they want to protect that, which all hunters are kind of like, yep, because they're asking now, what does the hatch look like for this bird or that critter or what have you? How many, what's the population? And protect that season is important. So that's the earliest it can be open, either one of them, teal or dove. Yeah. Except for your Eurasian collared dove,
which is open year round,
which is kind of a a naturalized invasive almost, Rachel.
Okay.
Yeah, they've kind of supplanted. Jeff, you and I are probably the only two old enough to remember all the pigeons that used to hang out in farmyards and co-ops and grain elevators and all that.
Yeah, not only remember them. I mean, we knew each other. I knew the pigeons. By golly, I was aware of where they flew.
I mean, there was bunches of them.
Yeah.
I remember growing up, just about every bridge out on the gravel roads you could walk over to if there wasn't a farmstead or ranch too far away. You could jump up and down and pigeons would come flying out. Mm-hmm. Eurasian collared doves have kind of, I won't say they've moved them out, but they've kind of filled that niche that some of those pigeons have. I don't see near the flocks of pigeons that we used to. And I think there's several causes to that. But it is kind of interesting. Eurasian collared doves, really not migratory. They're not really a competitor, but they do kind of occupy some of the niches of our native birds, including other doves. But they're they're managed a little differently, Kyle.
They are.
So
They allow season around just because they've caused some issues with some properties, damage, and that type of stuff. So they allow them open year round. Because I know that was one when I was a CEO I got questions on
all the time.
The question came out, how do I take care of all these ring-neck doves? And I'm just there. I'm like, ring-neck doves. That could go either way here. Let's ask them more questions. But getting down to just the collar doves. Then year round, take care of your problem.
Yep, and the thing is, during the dove season, the 60-day dove season that we have, we kind of like, all right, it can be tough probably to tell the two apart, so we're going to lump them together. So they're both in the same bag. It can be a mix. You can have 10 of one, 5 of the other. You can have 15 of all one, that type of stuff. So they're during the morning dove season, or what we often call the dove season. But you also we have morning doves, Jeff, and what is the other one? Is it the white-winged dove?
White-winged dove, yep.
Makes it sounds like she's singing.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Said
baby.
ooh. Said ooh.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. That's the best we can do.
That
was that a hard song? Who sung that?
That's the best you
Stevie
can do.
Nicks? Who was that?
Don't admit that.
And so with that song,
Moving on.
But anyway.
But in our for the most part, our hunters are happy with that. And mixing in the Eurasian collared dove and the morning dove, because they don't want to have to worry about that.
Can you imagine? Because the average for dove harvested in the state like Nebraska, and this is a national average, and we kind of did some research too, I believe, in Nebraska, and found the same thing. For per dove harvested, the hunter shoots 6 to 7.
He always brags
shells.
about that. It only takes him 6 shells per dove. Some of us
seven
it takes a little more.
It's the average. So some of us are using a lot more. There's no doubt about it. And if you actually get your limit of doves, and somebody will do it, there'll be several folks probably listening to get their 15 dove limit. You're thinking, accomplished. Now I got all these shells to pick up and all that type of stuff. Could you imagine saying, well, you can shoot 10 more Eurasian collar doves? You'd be like, no, you can't afford the shells.
I remember one of the hunts we went on years ago, and he's sitting above me, and I'm down below the field, and pop over here, and I, every once in a while I'd shoot, but he's limited out, right? And I'm not close. And to make matters worse, I'll sit with you. I'll sit with you. And I'm like, no, we just go. No, I'll sit with you. So he sat with me and watched figured out why I wasn't limited out. It became pretty obvious. He's like, I do got to go. I
remember someone bragging about this over-under that he got off one of the wildlife biologists, and this is a great gun.
It was a great gun.
It was pretty.
I can't correct that.
It was pretty.
Yeah. One of those things where you just didn't want any more witnesses.
I did not need that. I was like, no, Hershey, go on. No, I'll sit with you.
And the nice thing was we ran into some wildlife biologists.
Yeah, that was the nice thing.
There was more than just one witness.
You guys hunting? Hershey's like, nope, I've already limited out hours ago, but Jeff here, he's got about 9 to go. Yeah, I appreciate that, Hershey. Yeah, no, a good friend.
Oh, boy. But that is one folks really get pumped up for, and the enthusiasm lasts for about 2 or 3 hunts. Because these things are fair weather birds.
2 to 3 hunts only?
I'd say for the most part, and I think the problem is, you already admitted to it, is all the other things happening on that time frame, and then a week or 2 later, this opens and that opens, and all of a sudden, it's kind of like,
I'm just going to give you a hint, folks.
Boy.
Sick leave. I'm going to give you
sick
a hint
leave,
right
there
now.
you go.
First week of dove season, sick leave.
Pseudo-retirement.
Right? That can help too.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, I'm going to give you another hint. If you're looking to retire, September 1's a good day to start hitting that one.
And part of it is right now the doves are staging. They're getting together, and you can find some spots where, and I've seen a couple, and you guys probably have too, where there's a bunch of them hanging out. And they're kind of getting ready for the migration that takes a toll on them physically and all that. I mean, it's a rough, tough time to be a bird. It's an adaptation that helps them out, obviously, for finding food and for them water as well. But at the same token, it's one of those things that nature kind of, all right, we're getting together, we're putting on the feed bag, we're doing whatever, and they kind of find the same spots. And being one of those birds that's kind of social, if there's a bunch of doves there, it attracts more doves, which is a lot of fun. And then it doesn't take much, 40-degree night here or there, the right winds, and they start moving on. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not getting doves from the Dakotas and further north and all that type of stuff, but they don't seem to always stage unless all of a sudden it warms back up and we get another heat wave, and there's no reason for them to move on because they're going to make use of those resources. But you also see, I just think people get distracted.
Yeah.
I really do. So real quick, just some dove reminders. What are some of the things we need to make sure? Well, and Kyle, back to you. What's because Kyle's former life, and we're trying to, convert him, and it's getting closer, right? The conversion.
I think another year or two.
I'm not wearing green jeans today, so
There
we're
you
doing
go.
better.
This is true. This is the first time he's not had green on. So that's a good deal.
But a
He's
former
game worn.
life, and we can, sometimes you got to go back to those traumatic experiences and careers and stuff. When you were a conservation officer, we just lost all of the game words. Listen. What were some of the things that you saw? Because dove hunting, you can't just go buy a one permit and call it good. I mean, if you're of a certain age or a non-resident, you've got to have different pieces of the puzzle before you're good to go. So what
you
are some
left that really wide open there.
Well,
so.
yeah. Here, let's
That's good. But no,
highlights.
So obviously the first thing you need when you go hunt any upland, or this will be migratory, would be a hunt permit or basic Nebraska hunt permits and a habitat stamp.
And that's for those 16 and up if you're a resident.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. 16
Or all
and up.
non-residents. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So we got that one covered.
Small game or hunt permit.
Hunt permit.
I call it small game. And the habitat stamp.
Habitat
Okay.
stamp.
And
then
not done yet.
need a HIP number.
Keep shopping. Okay, HIP number.
That one's
Harvest
free.
Information Program. Get hip.
Yep.
That one is free, and we do it a little bit differently. And I've had some people ask a question about, I'm calling this number, this hotline number, and it's not working. You don't call the hotline number anymore, folks. You call a district office or Game and Parks office. They can help you through, but it's best done online.
Just easy
through our
to do.
permit
Right on your
system.
phone. Right on your
Now,
phone.
there's a lot more questions this year, especially if you're going duck hunting or goose hunting, because we've added some stuff. But at the same token, you're going to want to knock it out pretty fast. So you need that HIP number. How often did you find people that had the hunt permit and the habitat stamp, or better way, of those three, which is the one that they'd forget?
It was the HIP number.
The HIP number. I think that's easy to forget.
Oh yeah, it's free.
Do you want a weird note though?
And the free one's easy to forget for some reason.
Well, and it used to be that you went to the permit system to buy the habitat stamp and the hunt permit.
Yeah.
And then in another spot to get the HIP number.
Give
And
us-
now it's combined. But I do want to know weird.
We want to know weird.
The weird
we do.
note.
Yeah.
The weird note, based on how when we get into we talk about laws a few episodes back. Some are based on statute, some on regulations, some on commission orders.
Yeah.
So they all have different fine assessments to each one.
Oh boy.
The highest fine,
Uh-oh.
or it was a higher fine to not have the HIP number than it was to not have the habitat stamp. Weird fact.
Wow, that is kind of different.
So slight change.
So as a business model, I'm just looking at this from a business model. I think I'd have the higher fines on the paid act.
The bigger note on that though is any of those fines, none of it comes back to Game and Parks though. That all was going straight back into your local schools program with how our fines work. So
There you go.
and that was always the big complaint we always got when I was a CO was all those fines. You're just trying to pay for your own paycheck. It's like no, none of it actually comes back to Game and Parks when it comes to not having a permit.
And I heard you were very supportive of local schools.
Got a connection.
There might have been a few jokes of certain CEOs saying, "Hey, we should have the library named after us."
Oh, that's interesting.
The Lucan Library. I can see that right now.
That's a neat model. That's a model.
We might have to talk to Officer Lubin about that, see if we couldn't get that done, because then, by God, we'd have to see when the last time he was at a library.
Can't get
I
one
love
named
you,
after
Mike.
you if you haven't been in one.
I haven't been in the library. Well, I take that back. I was one in last weekend, to be honest with you. All right, so
Anyway.
HIP number.
Move
And
on.
for those that are going to, duck and goose hunters, we think about that quite a bit, but any migratory bird, snipe, rail, there's another one in there as well. Coot, thank you. And right now, if you're going to go duck hunting, and this will be the time you get a question about that, if you say yes, you've got two options when it comes to that harvest strategy for the fourth year in a row, I believe.
Yeah.
Whether
Now this is,
you go the traditional.
and this is not applicable to the early teal season. This is just for the
Correct.
normal duck season. But for the normal duck season, you have two harvest options now that you'll register for when you register for HIP. Tier 1, Tier 2.
Yep, and tier 2 is that 3 ducks, regardless of species or sex. But we bring that up because you only get one crack at harvesting
that's right.
for your HIP number, and you only get one crack at deciding if you're duck hunting. Am I going tier 1 traditional or tier 2?
Yeah.
The
So
reduced bags.
So even though you're registering for HIP before you go early teal hunting,
Yep.
you know, it has that harvest regime is the same. There's no change in the harvest regime for early teal season. That tier 2 doesn't kick in until the normal duck season starts.
Because that one's a very specific. Well, we should get into that here, but I do want to get some tips for doves. And Rachel, you've been kind of quiet over here.
Well, haven't done a ton of dove hunting.
What's that?
I haven't done a ton of dove hunting.
No, but you've
It's
been
fun.
around a lot of shooting, and to be honest with you, folks, we all need to practice more blue rock shooting.
This is true.
Before dove season, because we can bring that average down. I think that's part of the problem is that's the first thing we go out wing shooting for, and it's not the toughest to bring down, but it's definitely the toughest to connect with.
It really
because
is.
They're speedy and twisty, and they're not huge by any means. So I think that sometimes we don't even know they're within range until they're right on top of us, and then boom, they look like they
Says
disappear.
the guy who shoots 1 in
So,
6. He's on them
seriously.
like crazy. Some of us are struggling over here.
Well, yeah, sometimes you got to lead them by a foot, sometimes 2, sometimes by 15 minutes. You just never know.
So get out and practice.
Okay.
Yeah, get out and practice.
Good to
How
know,
would you
good to know.
practice for dove season?
Carefully.
I'd probably. That's the first
What's
step.
that?
Goes along with
Carefully.
safety.
Safety.
Carefully.
Safely.
That's
yeah.
right.
Carefully and safely.
Our education guy will start talking over here.
I would probably head out to the sporting clays range with my shotgun.
Ooh.
Smart move.
Now that
I would
is
go.
smart because doves hardly ever present themselves the same way twice.
No.
And so I remember maybe of the thousands of doves I have shot at, I suspect most of them were never the same presentation, right? And you can go shoot trap all you want, and that's a good start. But the sporting clays course, that's where you're going to try your patience just a little bit. Yeah, I like that.
And the neat thing about sporting clays is there can be a delay. When you yell pull, the bird doesn't automatically appear. Now, we've all been involved with trap shooting and skeet shooting and that type of stuff. If you don't see the bird right when they say pull, the shooter gives you this weird looks. Mm-hmm. And now if we could just say pull and a dove appears, it might be helpful. But having that delay and usually starting with the gun low in sporting clays like you do, definitely helpful. So that's a good one. Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Can help you key in on sounds too on that sporting clays range. You hear that thrower go, it's kind of the same as one of those birds making that noise as it goes
the
by.
same.
Yeah,
Just the same.
doves too.
Just gotta think about it that way.
Doves definitely make their own noise when they move around. And Jeff, you're pretty good at calling doves.
When I yawn, yeah. I mean, if I yawn, they come in. Yeah, they come
Folks,
running.
if you replay that, you know what it's like to office right there. No, I'm just kidding.
You lucky dog. 3 more weeks, buddy boy. 3 more weeks. There's a lot of sounds come out of your office too. I'm just saying.
Yeah, oh yeah. I'm not saying there isn't, but I can't do the dove yawn quite as well.
Seems to work once. Anyway,
Mine's usually, where did I put my coffee cup?
Calling doves to me has not been a very lucrative deal. Calling them's not the deal, but decoying. Now we're getting into the deal. Now we're getting into the way that most of us probably are hunting doves.
Except when you've been sitting there on your 5-gallon bucket and you're just, I haven't seen a dove in a while. There's no doves around here. You're looking around, and then all of a sudden you hear that behind you in a cedar tree or something like that. That ooh, 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 and you're thinking, my God, that sounds like a dove.
Yeah. And they do that to taunt you. They really
do.
do.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
They're smart about it.
If you ever heard a dove cackle, it's woo. I mean, they laugh at you just like teal will. Teal will laugh at you quite.
Rachel, I
More
think-
whistle, but
quite
yeah.
normally, yeah. Mhm.
I think it was Missouri who did a research project, because one of the things we hear even in Nebraska is, boy, these dove shooting spots, and we've got some wildlife management areas and state recreation areas that get managed for small game and birds, and some places specifically for doves and the opportunities they provide. And those are popular because, one, the doves find them, and two, everyone has access to them and they see all those doves, and so it attracts more hunters. And as long as it's done safely, a lot of fun. But it doesn't take long. These critters, being wild, their whole goal in life is, and what they make a living at, is staying alive. And so they move on and talk about burning them out. To some people, they just moved, they migrated, but they're going to the same field day after day. And you're going to see, a lessening return on investment, folks. And so they wanted to research, are we really burning these spots out? Are doves really moving out? Are they starting to migrate more based just on hunting pressure and all that type of stuff? So they put little radio collars at that time, and probably prehistoric GPS compared to what we have nowadays. and they were kind of following them during those hunting seasons. And, during some of the big time uses, and Missouri has a little bit more even tradition and opportunity for doves than Nebraska. And they found out most of these doves don't move. It's just they get away from the hunters. And they said they were shocked at how many doves they were able to track within shotgun range of the hunters, as the hunters there watching, and the doves just perched somewhere in a tree behind them, and they never knew either were there.
That I believe.
And so they find spots, and it doesn't take much because they are so small and quick. So that's kind of helpful. What kind of spots early on are you guys looking at for doves? Water, food, what are we looking at?
I like water. I like grain fields.
Yep, there you go.
Water to me is always, especially if the weather's warm, water is always kind of a critical factor. They have to have water. They have to have food. And they can go a long ways for both. But honestly, they'd rather have both in proximity if they can. Water is my go-to, especially evening hunts. I like water for evening hunts because one of the last things they do after eating, they'll gorge themselves in a cornfield and then fly down to the mud flats and get some water and then fly off to a roost tree.
Basically, got to be a puddle, right? They got to have some open shore.
And so I'm looking for those ponds, and I've got them that we'll be hunting here in just a few days. But I'm looking for those ponds that have drawn down a little bit and they've got nice, dry mud flats around them. They don't like landing in thick stuff. If they do, they're eating, right? They're landing on weeds and eating. But to hit the ground, they want open mud flats so that they can hit the ground and walk to the water. And so that's where I'm hunting, and that's where I'll put my decoys, simulate some doves on the ground by the water, and then some mojos that have the flapping wings to simulate birds coming into those mud flats. And those just seem to be killer. I mean, that just seems to be instant, a constant, flights if there's doves moving in the area. Now, that said, earlier in the evening, if I'm out there earlier, I'll go out into the grain field, especially if it's just harvested, which a lot of silage fields and whatnot are just killer for this. I'll go out in the grain field with the decoys, and I'll hunt those grain fields until late evening, and then I might switch back over to the pond because that's where they're going to be going. But and so it's just kind of knowing what doves are doing throughout the day that probably help you in finding the right spot.
Kyle, you look like you got
Yep.
something.
Oh, mine was always, I grew out in western Nebraska, I'll say southwestern to make it clear.
Okay. All right.
Anyways, our go-to was always we went out to the pasture, and then when whatever pasture was not being used by cattle at the time, and we were always set up there on the stock tanks.
Oh, yeah.
We were there on any windmill we find that's running there, filling them up. Exact same game plan kind of he was mentioning there of going out there in the evening because they're coming in nice and fast for a drink of water and then heading up to a tree line. Our common ones are pretty close to a neighboring cedar row trees.
Yeah, they love to roost in those cedar trees. And that's where you see them come out in the morning, go back in the evening. I think water is one of those connecting factors across the state. Because you get up into the sand hills or some of the more pasture country where there's not a lot of small greens, and they spread out and they find those wild seeds. Now, you might find a patch of hemp or something that they're really hitting hard, but they spread out, but the watering hole kind of brings them right in and provides some opportunity.
Food is everywhere. In Nebraska especially.
It is.
Food is just everywhere, whether it's wild seed or grain fields. Anybody harvests a cornfield in, several mile area, those doves can find that cornfield. So food's everywhere. But water and food together, that's dynamite.
And the one thing I'll toss out there, and it sounds kind of sounds like I'm being flippant. I'm not. There's a lot of places for doves to be, and anywhere you sit on a 5-gallon bucket, especially here in the eastern part of the state, if you sit long enough, you're going to see a dove, and a good chance that dove's going to fly past you because we do have food and water in a lot of places. But the fun of a really good dove hunt is finding the masses, finding where they really want to go in big numbers. Yep. And it's amazing. I thought I could scout, okay, this spot looks good. It's got this, it's got that. And until you see the doves there, that's an option of who knows how many hundred that they see when they're flying around during the day. If you don't see a lot of doves there, go look at a different spot. The one thing I feel more confident in than just about anything else is finding a spot with a dead old tree or a snag or some place where they can land and look. Like you said, they'll come down in some of those thicker spots. We kick them out of cornfields, for goodness sake. But they got to have kind of that spot where they look around, I think, for danger before they drop down sometime. And so that's helpful. Or you might do that around a water hole as well. We know some folks, I'm looking at you, Jeff Mysick, that even create their own dead tree spot. Where they got some private land and able to do that, and it still put it up a week or two before the doves get used to landing there. Or you've got a mojo tree that you used to carry around with you.
I do still, and I'll tell you right now, the mojo tree, you can buy them now. They make them commercially, but I just use 1/2-inch conduit and drill holes in it and put metal or wooden dowels through it, and you stick those 2 5-foot pieces in the ground together, and they're 10 foot tall. Put the mojo on the top and have a rod or something going through it that you can put your clip on your static doves, and it's a magnet. I mean, it's just a magnet, and doves will fly in and just, more often than not, some have tried to land on the tree, but more often than not, they'll come into a field and they'll start coming toward the water, and then they'll make a pass right past that mojo tree with the doves hanging on it. And of course, you get good shots as they're flying by. And a lot of times they're slowing down, which makes it a lot easier to hit.
That helps.
It really helps. And so setting those decoys up is one thing. Setting them up in a way that will get doves to slow down a little bit is a game changer.
Yeah. No, it's just bred into me that when I'm going hunting, especially in the early season, I want to get out there early. But dove hunting, you don't really have to do that. No. They don't wake up super early. You might see some, flirting around there before the sun completely breaks the horizon. But at the same token, you're going to see a lot more mid-morning. You're going to see more, they seem to disappear. If it's super hot, it seems like they find some shade. And then the mid-afternoon to the right till sunset, they're moving. So, which kind of makes it comfortable, right? Can't go that morning, great. Evening hunt can be just as productive, if not better, for doves oftentimes, especially around water. But any time of day can be good. And there's some folks that love walking them up and hunt them a lot like you would pheasants or quail, and that can be productive as well. So cool stuff there. I do want to hit on teal, because that's another one you brought that one up, because that opens September 1st this year as well. So opening morning, you're going to make a decision. All right, teal in the morning, dove in the afternoon, or am I going to flip-flop that? And then you've got, for a lot of folks, going to have Labor Day off to hunt the other, or in reverse order. And teal season is unique in that it's early. They are a duck. They are a small duck. They are a speedy duck. They are a duck that has pretty healthy populations, especially when you realize we got blue-winged teal, green-winged teal, and in western Nebraska,
cinnamon teal.
Cinnamon teal. Good on toast with sugar. Now, and all three of those species are allowed to be harvested during the teal season and the regular duck season. I'm always amazed that there's folks that get that confused. During November, how'd your duck hunt go? Oh, it's kind of warm, and it would have been great if I could have shot teal because we were covered up in teal. Well, yeah, you can hunt those during the regular duck season as well. But this time, when the teal season opens up in September, you can only hunt teal. You got to be able to identify teal, which is kind of nice because they move around. There's some defining characteristics, but they migrate so darn early that if we didn't have this season, we'd be missing an opportunity.
Yeah, and that's the early teal season for us here in Nebraska has been wonderful. It's been a lot of fun. It gives us some opportunity that, again, they migrate early through. You'll have teal throughout the entire duck season because they're going to be different migrators throughout the season.
Especially those green wings.
Yep, especially the green wings. But the bulk of especially blue-winged teal, but the bulk of the teal, they're coming through much earlier. And so this early September season is just a blast to get out and go after them. Shallow ponds, and this is where shallow is important. Deep, big reservoirs, lakes, what have you. Generally, they'll have some visitors once in a while, but generally they're not going to be the magnets. Some of these shallow ponds, puddles, Hershey, you've heard of them as puddles, look like they're not much of anything sometimes, and they can just be a magnet. I remember one time while we were dove hunting, watching teal just pour into an irrigation puddle. It was a big puddle out in the center of the section that had some water in it and grass all around it. They were just piling into that thing, but shallow is the key there. Decoys are pretty darn important, in my opinion, for teal, and getting them, especially figuring out where you might want to put the mark for them to land and get them out in front of you. Mojos are great for teal. That movement, teal they seem to hone in on that better than most ducks.
I think so. One, they're friendly.
Yeah.
Friendly. They're diving into where some ducks are still, swimming around from where they hatched out or were brooded or anything along those lines. But here, the one hint too, when it comes to mojos, this is where I get double duty out of my dove mojo. Mm-hmm. Because I don't need to carry that big duck mojo out into the marsh. It'll work. I think they like to see that spinning a little faster, and those mojo doves oftentimes have that. Plus, they're lighter. Plus, now it's $30-$40 rather than I don't know what a robo duck or anything goes for nowadays.
Oh, about 150, I think.
But and a couple, dove hunting, 1 or 2 mojos is usually enough for me, for one person. I don't see a lot of extra return in investment when it's just me or one other. Bigger groups maybe, but teal, if you can have 1 or 2 right down on the water where it's kind of reflecting, great. If you have one a little higher, if you're in a lot of vegetation, you're going to need that as well. That does not hurt. So I get double duty out of that. Also on the decoy front, I have found that, when you go buy a dozen decoys now, or even a half dozen, which is more common, you get a lot of drakes. Mm-hmm. And this time of the year, most of those ducks are still in their summer plumage or eclipse, which was given to them. So they're not as bright and shiny and colorful and blend in when they can't fly during the molt. So there are a lot of brown ducks out there. I already got a lot of big brown decoys that look like hen mallards in the regular season. I've used hen decoys because they're bigger and they stick out a little bit more, and those teal don't mind it.
No. In fact, again, like you said, they're friendly ducks, right? They're kind of gregarious. So they'll come in, when they see ducks, a lot of times they'll come in right next to some of those, just about any duck almost.
We might, and Kyle, you're just going to have to interrupt. You're going to
I'm going to start jumping in here and start talking, because I have the story of, I have a couple hunters who I know who swear by it. Goose decoys are the best decoys to use to bring in teal. They set up more goose decoys than anything else when they go teal hunting.
I did not believe that either, and I had some guys years ago that I'd hunt with that said the same thing. Best teal decoy there is candy goose decoys. And I've been on some goose hunts where mallards will avoid them, but the teal would just dive right in on them. So there's something there. I think it makes you wonder. All right, during the nesting season and the courting season, all that, they're oftentimes figuring out partners, and they probably make a difference. I'm not too sure that teal, we often say, duck hunters, you got to identify your duck. I'm not too sure teal are doing that when they drop in to those decoys real fast. They're like, duck, all right, here we're in. Because one of the things I have done is it's hard to get those 6-packs, 12-packs, whatever, that have a lot of hens nowadays, because bright, colorful drakes attract the hunters, and so we buy those more. I've actually bought black duck decoys, and I use them throughout the year. We don't have a lot of black ducks that migrate through the Central Flyway, and much less Nebraska, but they're dark. They stand
out better.
And when I buy 6 or 12 of them, I've got 12 or 6 that do. So though you get a lot of use.
Well, it sounds a little bit like you need to repurpose some of your decoys and repaint them and go through the whole process of.
I know, but when I repaint decoys, and I've done a bunch, they'll end up with this goofy smile on their face, and that just creeps me out. I mean, nothing like being pre-dawn and you're with some hunting buddies like, Aaron, I've never hunted around a happier spread of decoys than this one right here. I know. It's creepy. Well, they smile at me as I carry them out.
Wasn't it Vertiska, Mark Vertiska, our previous waterfowl program manager, that told us, when he'd do the flyway counts and he'd get up on the plane and fly around ponds and lakes looking at, he said, you could always see, you could miss decoy spreads left and right, but if they had black ducks or darker ducks in those spreads, you could see those quite a bit better from the sky. But if they just had a nice spread of mallards or whatever, a lot of times he said you could miss those because they just didn't stand out very well. And you got to think that if a trained professional, Dr. Mark Vertiska, is missing some of those, a duck flying by at 35 miles an hour might be missing them too. So some of those dark ducks, I think, coots, whatever, they kind of stand out pretty good.
Yeah. Oh, I did want to point out, when you talked about shallow water, again, these are small ducks. They're puddle ducks. We usually divide them between diving ducks that are in deeper water that dive down to grab their food, puddle ducks that are in shallower areas where they just kind of, or dabble. They just turn, stick the butt up, put their head underwater. And if you're talking a small duck, how long is a teal from nose to tail feather?
Not very. But maybe 10, 12 inches.
Yeah, it's not very long. And you got to think about that. All right, so when they dip up to get food, if it's not just floating on the surface, they got to tip up. They got to grab stuff that's there. And you're talking part of that, but sticking out of the water while they're doing that. So not even the 10, 12 inches is able. So if you're beyond that, they might stop there if they can surface feed, or they might stop there to rest. But other than that, it's not necessarily a good teal spot. No, early in the season, especially
shallow water. 6-inch puddles can be killer for teal.
Yep. You'll see them, like you said, walking on those mud flats.
Now, if you don't have that, you've got like ponds or whatever, then the extreme edge of the pond, where it's only 6 inches deep or so, that's got a lot of weed seed and everything in the water. And that's always where they're going to be. And a lot of times they'll land in those extreme edges and then swim or what have you back into the weeds a little bit more too. So if you don't have a good shallow pond, the extreme edges of your pond might work well for them too.
There you go. Keep an eye out for them. They'll be moving. There's already teal in Nebraska because we hatched some this year, some blue wings. We've had some pretty good reproduction. Talking to our current waterfowl program manager, him and his assistant been up spotlighting ducks. If that isn't a cool job right there, I don't know what is. But they've been impressed with the reproduction going on. A little drier up north, but there is a good, healthy population of blue wing teals. Like Jeff said, makes up the majority, especially early in the season. Green wings will join them, and every once in a while we get a cinnamon, and that when they're flying through in that eclipse plumage, going to kind of be tough to tell them apart, but pretty duck, those drakes, once they turn and get on their Sunday's finest. So those are the two biggest things, but like you said, there's a lot of other things going on. Archery deer start September.
Deer season's huge, yeah.
We're going to have to devote a whole podcast to that, because that's a whole art and science into itself. Talk about the mythical and elusive velvet buck, perhaps. Prairie grouse. Have you ever chased prairie grouse on September 1st?
That's another tradition with my grandpa. I would go out every year with him. He lives for grouse hunting. So
really? So he's out September 1 chasing them, or?
Yep. So it's been 2 years ago. We turned 80, and we went out.
Nice.
We went out together, and he put in the 3 to 4 miles up at Halsey National Forest, walking on top of the sandhills there with our dogs. So
awesome.
Yes, I've chased a few grouse in my time.
I was thinking about that. Our prairie grouse, which are made up of two species, sharp-tailed grouse and greater prairie chicken here in Nebraska. And we are the best spot to hunt greater prairie chickens on the planet. So we're the best spot to chase both of those in the same hunt. That's one of the cool things, and it makes me scratch my head that more people don't take advantage of that. There's a lot of prairie grouse hunting opportunities on public grounds. Yeah. Some big federal holdings. We got some state ground. We got some things in our open fields and water program, which are all right here, folks. We got it. You can hear it if you're listening to us. You can see it if you're watching us on YouTube. We got the new public access atlas for the year 24-25 out right now. Check that out. But a lot of opportunity there. And then when I start walking for grouse, I'm reminded why more people don't do grouse. Those things are out to kill you. They're out there to walk you to death, because you will walk, and you get in those country where, like you said, Halsey, Valentine, Crescent Lake, wherever you can hunt them type place, and you just look out on top of those sand hills, and you look out, and it all looks similar. It just goes until the horizon. There's grouse out here somewhere, and you walk and walk and walk, and just as you're giving up mentally, they jump just out of shotgun range. And then they just look like they're coasting down just on the other side of that crest of that hill. And you go there, and what happens?
They're never there.
It's 2 miles.
Yeah. When they go down, you're thinking, they're right. They had to go right over the hill and drop. That drop is another mile.
Yeah.
They can glide to the next. And when they drop, a lot of times, those darn things, they'll go right up to the next hill and then come down to the next hill. And you're thinking, now I got to walk all the way across the meadow and climb that hill. And they're just teasing you. And as soon as you get close, they'll go to the next hill. I mean,
that they're a devious critter when part of their strategy is, hey, where they park the pickup, because we're going to go get within 60 yards of that and flush just out of range just as they walk back after that 10-mile morning hike. We're going to walk back to the truck, and we're going to flush just out of range and tease them to pull them away from the truck a little bit more. That's just devious.
Just a godless bird. I mean,
But no finer trophy, because those grouse, I always see them as, survivor of the plains and prairies. They were here. That's a cool thing here in Nebraska, back when the Oregon Trail was a thing and prior to that. And it's just pretty impressive to have huntable populations like we do. They have figured out how to live in those environments where you just look out like nothing could live here. I mean, it's called the Great American Desert for a while. Well, there'd be all the water and stuff around it. But just a fun time. That opens September 1st now as well. I wait for a little bit longer before they try to kill me. But and then we got turkey that opens up, and that's October now, isn't it? We've got that October through November. But a lot of different things open up. Rabbit, if you're into that, which is usually more of a late season game to me. I think some of the snipe and rail seasons open as well.
I was trying to skip through here and see what else we all have. I stole your guide.
Yeah, I was going to say, we got the
I
2024
know.
guy that has a prairie grouse on it, a sharp-tailed grouse, if I remember correctly. Probably a picture Jeff took.
We're just right now. September
Here we
really
are.
is probably more seasons open in September than any other month. You know, think of it that way. So we are abound with seasons right now coming up here in September, and it's just going to be great. It's just going to get better and better. And then of course our traditional seasons in October for late October for pheasant and quail, and then as we get into December or November, firearm deer season. That's huge. That's probably one of the biggest opening weekends, if not the biggest opening weekend we have in the entire state of Nebraska. So yeah, now's the time and here's what happens. A lot of hunters, they say, oh yeah, I want to hunt all these things because I'm a hunter, blah, blah. And what they're really thinking is, late October, I'm going to start pheasant hunting. But they've missed probably 75% of the hunting opportunity that we have to offer between September and November.
Yep.
So my advice to you is get out in this September, October seasons. Get out in September. We're going to have some nice mornings, some cool evenings. Get out and enjoy those hunts. Every one in September, October is kind of a bonus hunt, in my opinion. And then you get into that main season in the late fall, early winter. You'll have had some memories already. So get out and do it.
I'm just going to add two, Rachel. Again, you've been kind of quiet. You got to learn like
I'm
Kyle
thinking,
just to
I'm
break in
learning.
here. But it's one of those cool things too. Is if I've dove hunted, my teal shooting average goes up.
Absolutely.
And if my teal shooting average goes up, and I get some good hunts in there, my grouse and pheasant shooting proficiency goes up. And by the time the regular waterfowl season opens up, I got confidence. But if I skip dove, and the first shot at a dove is always in just frustration. Just like, that was a dove, boom! It has the same amount of success as if I really tried. But it kind of builds. And I know that's kind of a weird way to say it, but it does kind of build on each other.
They do build on each other. And I have to be honest, the relationship with my dog has gotten worse since I started taking him dove hunting many years ago, because he's used to boom, bird going down. With doves, he's learned to relax a little bit, maybe take a nap while we're hunting. He's not quite as on edge as he is during the waterfowl season. And he's learned that a boom doesn't necessarily mean a thud, right? Yeah. And so we've had a love-hate relationship during dove season. And I have one of my two labs is not afraid to let me know, and he'll just go back and forth in front of me, looking at me, staring at me like, can't believe you missed that. Come back, can't believe you missed that. Can't believe you missed that. And then go back in his little kennel. So yeah, he's mean.
All right, we're going to have to put a fork in it right there. This one's already a little extra, but hey, it is that time of the year, folks. Make sure you're getting ready. Make sure you get those permits all knocked out, including that Harvest Information Program number, or HIP number, as we lovingly call it. You can do that all at outdoornebraska.gov. Click the buyer permit, and you'll be squared away here before everything gets too exciting. But appreciate you taking us along for the ride, or into work, home, wherever you might be. Make sure you give us a thumbs up or a subscribe so you know when each and every one of these new episodes of Hunt Nebraska airs. But until next time, we'll see you outdoors.
Hunt Nebraska, brought to you by your Nebraska Game and Parks Commission.